From the very first day, I knew something was different about my marriage. Ramesh, my husband, had a charm that could win over anyone. He was attentive, caring, and seemingly understanding. But beneath the polished exterior lurked a relentless desire to control every aspect of my life. It started subtly. He would suggest what I should wear, gently comment on my choices, and hint that my friends were not right for me. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was care, concern, or love. But as days turned to months, his control became suffocating. One evening, as I sat in the living room reading a book, he appeared behind me, peering over my shoulder. "Why are you reading this? You should read something more useful," he said, his tone casual but insistent. I felt a chill run down my spine. That moment crystallized a reality I had been avoiding. My life was slowly being dictated by someone else, someone I had trusted with my heart. The controlling behavior escalated. Ramesh would decide what I ate, when I slept, and even which relatives I could meet. Friends I had known for years were now unreliable, according to him. Every decision I made was questioned, critiqued, or subtly undermined. Work became a battlefield. Though I had my own career, he constantly insinuated that I was incapable of managing responsibilities without his input. At first, I tried to compromise, thinking perhaps I was overreacting. But the pattern was clear. Ramesh's idea of love was control. He masked it as care, but the reality was suffocating. I began to feel trapped, a puppet whose strings were being pulled at every moment. The breaking point came one evening when I suggested attending a friend's small gathering. His response was sharp. "You don't need these distractions. Stay home. You belong here," he said. That statement, simple as it seemed, ignited a spark inside me. I realized I could no longer live in silence. I started small. I began asserting minor choices without asking for his approval. I wore a dress I liked instead of the one he suggested, and I took a call from a friend he disapproved of. Each small act of independence felt like a victory, but it came with tension. Ramesh noticed immediately. He would frown, comment, or sometimes silently seethe. But I was learning the power of subtle defiance. I realized that the key wasn't confrontation, it was reclaiming my voice and space without escalating conflict too early. Friends began to notice a change in me. "You look happier," one remarked. I nodded, realizing that standing up for myself, even in small ways, was the first step towards regaining my life. I started keeping a journal, documenting every incident, every controlling remark, and every subtle attempt to undermine my autonomy. This journal became my anchor, a record of my growing awareness and a reminder that I could fight back intelligently, not just emotionally. By now, I realized that small acts of defiance alone wouldn't be enough. Ramesh's control had deep roots, built over years of subtle manipulation. I needed a strategy, a way to reclaim my independence without triggering outright confrontation that could backfire. I began to set boundaries carefully and deliberately. I started attending professional meetings without informing him in advance, asserting that these were necessary for my career. I spent time with friends, not hiding my presence, but making it clear that I had a life beyond the confines of our home. Ramesh, predictably, tried to reassert control. "You can't just leave whenever you want," he said one evening, his tone sharp. But I stood my ground. Calmly, I explained why these engagements were important to me, using logic rather than emotion. He was visibly frustrated, but had no valid argument. Each small victory strengthened my resolve. I realized that control feeds on silence. The moment I spoke up, I chipped away at his power. Fighting for my independence was not without cost. There were nights I lay awake, questioning whether I was making the right choices. Doubt crept in, accompanied by guilt. Had I married poorly? Was I being selfish? But the more I reflected, the more I understood that these feelings were the tools of manipulation he had used for years. Recognizing this allowed me to distance my emotions from his tactics. I focused on practical actions, not reactive feelings. I also began confiding in my closest friends, sharing my experiences openly. Their support was invaluable. They reminded me that standing up for myself was not rebellion. It was reclaiming a life that was rightfully mine. Slowly, I began to notice changes. Ramesh's subtle criticisms were becoming less frequent. He had underestimated my ability to hold my ground. I realized that strength does not always need to be loud. It can be quiet, unwavering,
and deliberate. The turning point came during a family gathering. Ramesh attempted to control every aspect of the evening, instructing me on how to arrange the table, how to serve drinks, and even how to interact with relatives. I decided it was time for a subtle yet firm demonstration of autonomy. Ignoring his instructions, I arranged the table in a way that made sense to me, greeted guests warmly, and engaged in conversations naturally. The results were immediate. Guests complimented the arrangement and the atmosphere. Ramesh's attempts to correct me fell flat. His authority had been quietly undermined by competence, confidence, and calm defiance. For the first time, I felt the tangible power of reclaiming control over my own life. I was no longer a passive participant, I was an active architect of my reality. By now, my small victories had shifted the household dynamics. Ramesh, sensing his grip weakening, tried to escalate his control. He confronted me one evening in the living room. His voice, usually calm and authoritative, trembled slightly with frustration. "You think you can do whatever you want?" he demanded. "This house, this life, it's my domain. You have no right to decide anything without me." I looked him in the eyes, steady and unwavering. "Ramesh, I do have a right. I have a life, a mind, and a voice. I won't let you control me anymore." The words felt like liberation as they left my mouth. For years, I had lived under subtle oppression, internalizing doubt and fear. This confrontation was different. It was not fueled by anger, but by clarity and resolute. Ramesh's shock was palpable. He had never encountered resistance like this. For the first time, he realized that control is an illusion when the other person refuses to play along. After the confrontation, I began asserting myself more boldly. I attended workshops, spent weekends with friends, and pursued hobbies I had long abandoned. Each action was deliberate, a statement that my life belonged to me. Family and friends noticed the change. They commented on my confidence, my radiant presence, and my ability to maintain composure under pressure. I felt a renewed sense of identity, separate from the shadows of control that had loomed over me. At home, Ramesh's attempts to dominate became increasingly transparent and ineffective. I no longer allowed passive-aggressive remarks or subtle criticisms to affect me. I responded calmly, firmly, and without fear. The ultimate test came during a major family event. Ramesh attempted to dictate every detail: who would sit where, what food would be served, how conversations should proceed. I calmly intervened, coordinating the event my way. Guests were delighted by the smooth organization, the warmth, and the energy of the gathering. Compliments flowed, and even distant relatives commented on the improvement. Ramesh's attempts to intervene were met with polite but firm resistance from me. For the first time, I realized that control isn't about shouting or enforcing rules. It's about competence, confidence, and presence. My assertiveness had reshaped the perception of who I was in my own home. The final moment of liberation came quietly, one evening in our bedroom. Ramesh, realizing his control was slipping completely, tried to dictate one last decision regarding our finances. I looked at him, steady and resolute, and said, "No, this ends now. I will make my own choices, and you will respect them. I am done living under your control." Silence followed, a heavy, tense silence. Then, slowly, a grudging acceptance. For the first time, I felt truly free. Life after that day was not perfect. Relationships take time to heal, and old patterns occasionally resurfaced, but the difference was profound. I had reclaimed my life. I had said no and meant it. Standing in my living room, looking out at the city lights, I realized something remarkable. Control is a choice, but freedom is a declaration. And I had declared mine, boldly, fiercely, and irrevocably.